Hey there, how's it going? It's me, Commandant Franz, and I'm going to go over 5 of the most common mistakes people make when they're arguing. And these aren't going to be stupid things like needlessly insulting your opponent, because if you're doing that, this video isn't for you, you're an idiot. Nor is it going to be a list of the most common fallacies and their definitions. Rather, it's going to be common things that people say that don't hold up logically. 1. Refusing to answer trap questions. This is when someone will say, I'm not answering that question, it's a trap. So someone will say like, oh, well, if you believe this, wouldn't you also have to believe this? And then they're like, no, I'm not going to answer that question is a trap. Well, either it's a logically valid trap, in which case you're wrong whether or not you answer it, or it's an invalid trap, in which case you should be able to answer the question and then point out why even then it doesn't matter because you're still correct. Either way, you should answer the question instead of just saying it's a trap. 2. Accusing your opponent of cherry picking. This is where someone will say, well, yeah, that example you just gave that combats my point is true, but it's a cherry-picked example. And sometimes you might be right, and sometimes they might have just given one cherry-picked example, and all the other examples back you up because you're trying to make a general claim. Things are generally this way. But then I see people doing this even when they're trying to make an all-encompassing claim, like everything is this way. And so they'll say, well, that's a cherry-pick argument. Well, yeah, but you're saying literally everything is this way. So my cherry-pick thing is not this way, which means you're wrong because you're not making just a general statement. You're saying everything is this way. It doesn't matter if what I'm saying is cherry-picked or if it's anecdotal evidence or whatever. 3. Discrediting extreme analogies. This is similar to the last one, but this is where your opponent will make an extreme analogy to combat what you're saying. And you'll say, well, the situation you've just laid out in your analogy is much more extreme than the real one. So what I'm saying is still true. But the thing is, in many cases, just like with cherry picking, it can still be valid because in many cases, it doesn't matter how extreme it is. If you're arguing that something should be some way, often the extremity of the situation is not a deciding factor in whether or not that situation applies. 4. Arguments based purely on authority or experience. There's a well-known fallacy called the appeal to false authority, where you will say that because someone is an expert on, say, geology, and that person also says that birch trees are a type of evergreen, that because they're an expert on something, they must be correct. But that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is, well, there's a few varieties, but I'm lumping them all into the same group because they're all similar. One variety would be someone's an expert or has experience in a certain field, and they make a claim. And someone without the same expertise or authority makes a competing claim, and they say, well, I don't think it would be this way because this. And then you say, well, you're wrong because he's an expert and he says this, so you can't disagree with him. Experts can be wrong. If someone's making a claim and they're backing it up with evidence, you can't discredit it just because an expert disagrees or someone with experience disagrees. Now, the opposite of this would be someone making a claim and you saying, well, you can't make that claim, you're not an expert, you're not an authority. Well, again, if you're backing it up with logical evidence, then yeah, you can make the claim whether or not you're an expert or have experience with the thing. 5. Claiming credit for your opponent's concessions. This one's a bit different, but what this is when your opponent will say, oh, actually, one idea that I just had that would support your point is this. And then you say, yeah, that's what I was saying the whole time. But that's not what you were saying the whole time. You were making other bad arguments for your point. And then your opponent thought about it and he thought of a good argument for your point, and you're claiming that you made that argument when you never did. This is really annoying. Don't do that. So I hope that after watching this video, you can either stop making these mistakes or point it out when someone else does it, and then you'll be able to reach a logical truth better. Goodbye.